Well, if it isn't the manly man himself.
Hi, Steve. How's it going?
Things are fine, sir. And you?
Fairly decent. Fairly decent. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right.
Is this film on?
Well, I'm filming it, but I now have an app for doing podcasts, so I'm going to try that. If that works, then there's going to be 2 ways of talking to Dave when he calls me once a month.
So he's talking on a landline, I suppose, or does he have a cell phone?
He has a landline. I had a landline, but we switched our internet provider, and the phone was part of the internet provider, so the the landline phone has gone bye-bye. My old internet provider, 2 hours of video took about 24 hours to upload to YouTube. The new provider, I uploaded half of last month's in half an hour.
That's worth it.
I mean, and I was my wife's been complaining about it's $90 a month for the home phone and the internet's always slow, and we can't do anything once a month when you're uploading videos, and I don't like this, and I want it different. And I'm going, okay, we'll try it. And after I uploaded all those videos, I'm like, okay, it paid for itself.
Hey, happy wife, happy life?
At this point, I'm not even concerned about a happy life. I just don't want to get, yelled at for, it costs us $90 so you can get a phone call once a month.
Right.
Okay, so welcome everybody, because I am filming this. I'm Manly Matt Dowd. I'm talking to Steve Swenson, and Steve sent me that thing that the camera's pointed at, and I'm going to let Steve explain what it is.
Well, it is to the best of our ability to determine, it is a copy of Dave's original inked art. From what I understand from Gerhard via email, Gerhard would make copies of the art for his own use. In an email he mentioned he still has a number of them. As you can see with what the example that Matt has, that one's very brown. Gerhard says his still look white and bright as new. Where it came from, how it got out in the wild, we're not sure. I bought it recently on eBay. Did a little sleuthing, asked some questions, found out a little bit about it. And seeing as it's the middle of July, I was in a Christmas spirit and thought, I'm going to gift this to a Cerebus fan who is doing an extraordinary amount of work for all of us fans, and just out of that sense of gratitude, I passed it on to Matt. The thinking I have is perhaps Dave brought it with him for a con and sold it to someone. I don't think that's the case, because that's clearly not Dave's signature on it, or as somebody told me, if Dave did sign that, he signed it with his foot. I think maybe a better explanation is the copy shop or office supply or wherever it is that Gerhard made his copies, somebody kept one, and somehow it stayed in the wild. The copy has been dry mounted, and there's a little clasp in the back for hanging it on a nail on the wall. I'm pretty sure they did not do that in the studio with the original art. I would hope not. Which again is why I think it's something that was sitting around in the copy shop, and they happened to have that ability to dry mount it, or the fan did. Again, my guess is employee at the copy shop knew a Cerebus fan, took the copy, dry mounted it, put a fake signature on it, and gave it to their friend. That's my best guess.
Well,
and then here, decades later, it ends up on eBay, and I win an auction.
Well, I'm just thinking that it might be a case that, because it's the cover for number 80, that would put it around, 1984, 1985?
Yep.
It could have been because That would have been around the time that Dave and Denny had split up, so it could have been. Wasn't that around Honolulu when they were in Hawaii?
Oh, that I couldn't. That's going too arcane for me to.
Well, that's
remember.
I emailed Gerhard once, and he's like, and he sent me everything back and forth between you and him. And I'm like,
Okay,
is it okay?
yeah.
Is it okay if I run this? And he's like, well, you should ask Steve. And I laughed and thinking, well, I'm calling Steve tomorrow, but I'm gonna ask him because it could have been that he and Dave were on the road, either doing signings and conventions, or when they had, because I swear they were in Hawaii for a while, and it could have been a case of they had it. Gerhard finished the cover, thought it looked okay, and went, we don't need this, and then gave it to somebody or sold it to somebody.
Sure.
I mean, it might not even be Dave's fake signature on there, though. Yeah, now look closely, it does look like a D. I was looking at it, I'm like, it could be a T.
Well, then I also got in touch with Brian. I don't want to pronounce his last name wrong. Coppola?
I believe that's how you...
Yeah.
Coppola?
Anyway, Brian, if I mangle your name, I apologize. And he made the point that Dave's signature really has remained consistent for years. Even when he was purposely altering his signature, the alteration remained consistent. And the writing on there is just a spastic scrawl. So that's why I really don't think Dave ever had anything to do with it.
Well, it could be a case of Gare or Dave gave the unsigned copy to somebody. Someone. Oh, hey, that's neat. Can I have it? Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, it's just a worthless copy. It's not the original.
Right.
And somebody else went, I can make money on this. Possibly somebody got it, gave it to their girlfriend. Their girlfriend didn't care. They broke up, and then years later, it's, hey, we can make money on eBay.
Right.
I mean,
now I did get in touch with the seller several times, who made a commitment to me to get in touch with the owner several times, and I've never heard back from him.
Oh, well, they must live in Atlanta, and they're helping Dave do research on Margaret Mitchell for Sodor.
Who knows?
No, that Dave said that he's had this where fans have come and said, oh, I live in Atlanta, I can go to the Historical Society and get whatever you need. And Dave never hears from them again. Like, apparently you go to the Historical Society in Atlanta, mention Margaret Mitchell, and you get sworn into the Freemasons, and they never let you out again.
Right, yep. The alien light opens in your forehead, and you're pulled into the void.
I mean, I know people in Atlanta, and I'm like, oh, I could ask, and then Dave says that, and I'm like, yeah, they're relatives, and I kind of want to see them again at Christmas.
Well, I remember the email you sent me the day it arrived, and you were just like, no, that's not what I think it is. Is it? Is it what I think it is?
Well,
so,
I emailed you, and then I emailed pictures to Sean Robinson and Margaret Liss going, this can't possibly be what I think it is, because if it is, I owe him money. And Margaret was, it could be, and I'm like, no, it can't be. Nobody just goes, hey, I have a Cerebus cover I don't want. You like Cerebus, you can have it.
Right.
I'm still debating if I'm going to frame it or just hang it on the little hook, or I don't know yet.
Well, and that's, I would personally, I think if you frame it, maybe see what it would cost to do some conservation on it.
I might have to. Oh, the other one I was thinking of, because I know Gerhard will take old sketches of Dave's or anybody else's, and for a fee will add a new background. And I was thinking, I kind of want to send it to Gare and be like, hey, put a background on, but instead of doing the actual background, do it as Buck Rogers in the 25th century and just do rocket ships and all sorts of inappropriate anachronisms. and then we'll see if anybody, if ever I decide to get rid of it, it'll be, oh yeah, Gerhard put a background on it. Everybody will like, oh, that's great. It's a recreation. No, it's completely not a recreation.
Right.
But I'm thinking, rocket ships, jetpacks. I think Gerhard would have fun with that.
Absolutely. But what I would, in that same vein, because I kind of toyed with that too, but I've made so many email commitments to Gerhard for projects that I can't follow through on because, money.
Because you haven't won the lottery?
Right. Scan it and clean it up.
Oh, and that's... I might get it scanned, and I might talk to Sean about cleaning it up, because I know about what his price range is, and now that I've said that, he's going to jack the price up on me. Well, the other one is I want to ask Gare, I'm like, so you have all these copies of covers and stuff that you've never done anything with. Why don't you do something with them?
I was thinking the same thing. Absolutely same thing.
And the answer, I think, is that Gerhard would say is because I want to go on the boat.
Yep. Well, and it makes sense to... Well, we all have things that we enjoy. And that there's the nostalgia side of it. And I don't know if it's the same for Gerhard, but it may simply be his preference to generate the income the way he already is, than, say, slap a signature or some background art on a 40-year-old photocopy. I think there'd be a market, absolutely be a market for it from the fans.
Well, and it's the old problem of, as fans, we would pay money for this thing, and as creators, Dave and Gare go, you guys are insane.
Right.
That's why we don't have a Cerebus miscellany volume. It's why, like, the past 6 ideas I've pitched to Dave, he is very politely but very firmly shot down of, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to make any money. And I'm like, but this is stuff people have flat out told me. I will give him money for this.
Yes. Well, and do you remember the posting where he said Strange Death is dead? And talking about money. And I spent a couple hours, and I pulled up Cerebus on eBay, and I posted the finances generated in the prior 90 days of Cerebus auctions.
Yeah, I forgot to send that to him. I apologize.
Oh, but... So on the one hand, he's a pariah. On the other hand, just from selling back issues, thousands of dollars are being generated. So he has, or I don't know if they're still available to him, all those warehouse books. Monetize it.
Well, I know he's got upwards of 250 copies of each issue that was available from the warehouse that he pulled, and it's in the Off-White House.
Right.
And those were going to be not the file copies, but the
the Off-White House.
They're Off-White House copies that are designated for after he dies and Eddie needs revenue, sell these books. So right. I know he probably wants to sit on those, but at the same time, it's like, if you know you have the issue and you know that it can be sold, and you don't even have to go through CGC and slab them and make them unreadable, as reading copies, but $10 a pop with a certificate of authenticity, Dave's signature, an Elrod bunny or a Cerebus tree. I mean, that you're 100% right. That is a guaranteed way that money could come in. Dave's response, I already know, is going to be, but then you got to factor in paying Raleigh to bag and board and ship everything and blah blah blah. And I'm like, and I keep telling him, factor that into the price. Whatever you're going to sell, add the money in. And Dave consistently goes, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And I bang my head against the wall, and I go, and every time it comes up, I'm like, I'll go one more round to see what happens.
When those copies first came up, maybe I didn't contact him directly, but through a Moment of Cerebus, I again brought up doing custom hardcovers. And again, for whatever reason, that's something Dave doesn't see a market out there. So 15, 18 years ago, I was buying runs of the bi-weekly reprints, for crying out loud. Going through a local binder, having custom hardcovers made of them, and selling them for hundreds of dollars. I'd spend $30 buying the books from Mile High Comics. I'd spend $25 having a local bindery make a custom hardcover, and I'd go and sell them to the second highest bidder on eBay without ever having listed it.
And that's
it's possible. It can happen. And fans want the covers, they want the essays, they want the notes from the president.
I can see why that part of Dave's objection is a lot of this is we did the books this way, and if we change the format, now you're asking people to buy a new format, right. And that's why it's 16 volumes. That will always be 16 volumes.
Right.
Things will be added in possibly if like Church and State 2 might get square one if they can get it bound without the pages falling out. But it's it's one of the thickest phone books, and that's why it's not in there right now. And it's like, somebody was complaining on Facebook of that, Dave's sticking with the phone books when he could do a much better format. And my response to this, that I haven't posted yet, but next time it comes up I'm going to say something, is when I was at a comic convention with my wife, and we were at the CBDLF booth, and they had a bunch of signed Strangers in Paradise trades. And she was getting into Strangers in Paradise, and hey, it's signed by Terry Moore. This will be perfect. And there was the regular thin trades, there were the pocketbook trades, there were the omnibus trades, and she's looking at all this going, which format do we have at home? Because we had the first trade. And I'm like, at this point, does it matter? You could buy all the 5 omnibuses, have the whole thing, and she's going, but I don't want to buy something we already bought. And I'm like, and that is what the format problem is if Dave switches horses.
Right. Yeah. I think, to me personally, the workaround on that is you do a limited edition.
Well, and that's if you're binding up 6 copies and selling 6 copies at a premium price of, there's 6 copies of this run, that's it. Then,
right.
Well, Jimmy Gownley, who does Amelia Rules, told Dave, you need to do hardcovers, and the way you do it is you order an extra 100 copies of the regular edition and then send them out to get bound.
Yep.
And they're limited to 100 copies, with a book plate, signed and numbered, all that, all the bells and whistles. And Dave's response was kind of, sort of, yeah, no.
Well, you can lead the horticulture, but you can't make her think. And we all care about Dave, the work that he's created. We do our part to support it, and the rest is up to him.
Well, and that's, at the end of the day, it's Dave's not going to do something Dave's not going to do, and no matter what kind of 15-minute PowerPoint presentation with all the bells and whistles is going to convince him to do otherwise. It's like Oliver in the Cerebus animated movie that he's been working on for a decade, that Dave, has been adamant of, I'm not going to approve of this until I see a completed movie, and the comeback to that is no one's going to put 1 million man-hours into this movie if no one's ever going to see it.
It's a catch-22.
I've seen work prints of it, and it's Cerebus, but at the same time, it's the hardcore fan in me goes, but it's not Cerebus. This is different, that's different, and it's like, one of these days I'm going to sit my wife and kids down and be like, we're going to spend a couple hours watching this animated movie, and then when we're done, you're going to tell me if you think it's good. I as a Cerebus fan am highly offended that Oliver changed or added or altered,
sure.
this or this. Is this because I'm a pedantic asshole, or is this because, it's a change that shouldn't have been made? Because Oliver will send it to me and the Cerebus and Hell team going, you guys have any notes? And my notes are always, it's a movie and not a comic book. It's the same problem I had with Watchmen. I love Watchmen. watched Watchmen, and I'm just shaking my head going, why? You're slavishly adapting this graphic novel, and yet, at the end of the day, you change this, this, and this for no apparent reason.
Right.
And, so, like, I watched the movie once, and it's like, I'm never going to watch this again. And I don't want to do that with Cerebus because, I want Oliver to succeed. I want this movie to get released. I don't want Dave's idea of having Brad Pitt do all the voices.
Yeah, and I don't think that one would go over.
Oh no, that was the last time Dave was actively working on it. They had an in with a production company that had worked with Brad Pitt, and their solution was offer to let Brad Pitt do all the voices, and I'm just thinking, Brad Pitt doesn't get paid 10 times if he does 10 voices. He gets paid once.
Right, yeah.
Also, that's the complete backwards way of animation, because as far as I understand, animation is you do the voices and then you animate.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that to say.
I mean, it's one of those. It's the fun of being the interim editor. I learn all this stuff from all these interesting people. Like today, I'm doing the blog post, and it's all the Todd Klein stuff, and I'm literally adding the biographical stuff at the bottom so I can hit post, and I get an email from Dave. Oh yeah, here's another fax about Todd, and I'm like, all right, got to send this to Todd. Got to wait 20 minutes to see if Todd has a response.
He's been very, very gracious with his time, with his responses. I'm grateful for his willingness to participate in the feedback from the fans.
Well, and what I liked was the fact that he sent Dave a fax with 2 pages, and they were 2 very early pages. And, I looked at it and went, no, those aren't the first 2 pages that jump to my mind when I think of Cerebus lettering. And Dave rightfully, instead of saying, those 2 pages aren't good, you can use these 2 pages, Dave knew, turn it over to fans, because we're going to have that 1 page that the lettering was amazing. And I think that was the right call on Dave's part. And yeah, the fact that Todd Klein was willing to say, my first 2 choices weren't my first 2 choices. And he went online and was looking, and he found the 2 pages from guys that I think he's going to end up using.
Sure.
And
well, one of the things that became more apparent, more readily apparent to me, is in Guys, in some of the later books, Dave uses the words structurally as part of the architecture, so to speak, of the story.
I swear it was a dialogue between Dave and Eisner where Eisner, one of them asked the other one, "Do you put the lettering in before you finish the penciling or before you ink?" And I swear it was Eisner. It might have been Eisner talking to somebody else, because I have a copy of Shop Talk that I've read. And it all starts jumbling together. But
right, yeah.
Eisner flat out said that when you design a page, lettering is not an afterthought. You have to have the lettering in mind when you're designing a page. And I mean, for all that Frank Miller is Will Eisner's heir apparent, I mean, Dave has a very close second, because he really internalized that a page isn't a page until it's done, and you have to have everything laid out. Like, there has to be room for the word balloons. And
yes.
And I think part of it was just the series being as long as it was. I know that there's the Masters of Comic Book Art interview where Dave says comics at their core is 2 talking heads, and I think that was Jocka's story, Dave. I think by the time he got done with Mothers and Daughters, it was, no, comics are more than just 2 talking heads. Comics can do things no other medium can do, and I'm going to prove that to anyone that doubts it.
Yes, yeah.
And that's why he has a blog devoted to him, that some schmuck agreed to take over when the original guy said, I have to go now.
Well, and so in thinking about the lettering, the first thing I thought of is, here I am, early 20s, Margaret Thatcher comes on the scene, course, I know how her voice sounds because I hear it in the news. And he captures graphically her vocal inflections. And for me, that's the artistry in what he did with his lettering. It's not just block type. You're reading it audibly. You hear the swoop and the pause of her vernacular in the lettering. And it's just, I don't know that had been captured so persistently, consistently by other creators.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody. I mean, Seiler wanted one of the pages of Mick and Keefe on the side of the mountain because, you get, it sounds like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Yeah. And somebody else wanted Harrison and Starkey or Richard and Harrison because, they sound like the Beatles. And part of me wanted to throw out the Guthrie and Strom from issue 18 because, they read as German. They sound like Schultz and Klink because they're supposed to sound like Schultz and Klink.
Yes.
And the lettering wasn't as stylized as it later got, but it was, that was one of the things about, Dave winning Best Letterer. Well, yeah, he should have won Best Letterer. Yes. And I understand that he's a little bitter that he was only ever nominated as a letterer, but at the same time, Well, also, I think that Dave is part of the problem, and it came up in the Todd Klein thing, is that, Gene Day thought he was a great letterer and had Dave do a bunch of work, and then Mike Friedrich had it relettered because he didn't like Dave's lettering.
Right, yeah.
And I think that slight stuck with Dave a little bit of, you say I'm a great letterer, but I still remember when Mike Friedrich said that, my lettering wasn't good enough, and it's like, but Dave, it's been 40 years, I think you can let it go.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think there his point was, you have this view of yourself, okay, I've made it, and then somebody the next rung up is saying, yeah, not quite. I think that's kind of the point that Dave was making, because he was asking of Todd, when did you know that you had arrived, sort of a thing.
Right.
So I think we may have kind of read that a little differently.
Well, Dave over the years is, the only recognition he's ever gotten was for his lettering, and I don't know what Dave expected to have happen once he got done with issue 300. I know that, he's said in interviews that it wasn't, or said in essays and stuff that it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And it's like, well, at a certain point, you get issue 300 out, and, it's 300 issues of a comic. You can't skip anything. It all builds on itself. It's not like 300 issues of Spider-Man where you can skip 150 to 200 and you're not